Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with, if I could choose only one work by composer X, it would have to be work P. Well, composer X is Liszt. And you had many, many suggestions for Liszt, I have to confess. And one of them I thought was really, really, really brilliant. And I was torn. The reason I was torn is because I was thinking about, of course, the sonata in B minor, which is his greatest work in a single movement, sort of all-in-one kind of form that he was aiming at throughout his career, particularly with the, tone poems and whatnot. And because Liszt was a piano guy, it has to be a piano thing. I mean, it really does. And Jed was pushing for the sonata, and so were a lot of you. And I really don't like to buck Jed because, boy, does he know his stuff when it comes to piano music. But then one of you suggested something else. You said it has to be the Hungarian Rhapsodies. And you explained why. And the explanation was so sensible. It really was. And I thought to myself, that person is right. It has to be the Hungarian Rhapsodies. Why does it have to be the Hungarian Rhapsodies? Well, Jed pointed out that the sonata was Liszt's greatest exemplar of this, all-in-one organic kind of form that he was shooting for. And for that reason, it is completely atypical of Liszt's work. And the concept behind this series is to find sort of the most typical work by the composer in question. And Liszt was always on again, off again when it came to working in larger forms. And the success of the sonata is entirely atypical of his work generally. So that's one thing. Whereas the Rhapsodies are rhapsodic. You don't have to worry about form too much. They were more improvisatory. They show what he was doing as the great virtuoso, number one. That was one point. And the other point, the second point that I thought was really, really powerful and persuasive is the fact that they're all based on other people's tunes. Most of Liszt is based on other people's tunes. That is typical. Actually, as a proportion, the amount of original musical material that Liszt produced in his lifetime was rather small compared to the amount of music that he produced working with other people's melodies, whether arranging. One of you suggested the Don Juan fantasy, which was also a brilliant suggestion, I think, because those opera paraphrases were a major, major component of his music and very, very important. But yeah, Liszt really kind of needed other people's tunes to riff on, to fantasize about, to be rhapsodical about. And then he created his own things based on those melodies. And I think a lot of his most successful music is based on that because, for a simple reason, Liszt was really not a tunesmith. It wasn't his thing. His own melodies, occasionally, look, he was a genius, and so occasionally he came up with fabulous melodies. One of the Liebesträume, for example, or some of these other things are absolutely beautiful. He could write tunes. There's no question about it. But do we go around humming Liszt's tunes that are Liszt's? Or do we listen to the tunes that he arranged elsewhere? And the Hungarian Rhapsodies are all based on either what he thought were folk tunes or verbonkos music, that sort of gypsy melodies borrowed from various places, played by gypsy bands, or other things. And so, the Rakoczy March, or, not the Radetzky March, the Rakoczy March, or whatever, one of those things. He did one of those march things. He used other people's melodies, and he used them brilliantly, frequently. So that also is more typical of what Liszt did and what he did as a composer. And last but not least, I think the important thing about the Hungarian Rhapsodies is that, first of all, there's an album of them. They fit on 2 CDs in a nice little compact collection, especially when played by Michele Campanella. Oh, that's the great one for the Hungarian Rhapsodies, in my humble opinion. But beyond that, they cover his whole career as a composer. I mean, he started writing them around the 1850s, and he was still doing it in the 1880s. So you've got like 19 of them, and they follow the evolution of his style. And it did evolve quite considerably from virtuoso flash to that more sort of austere, desolate, death-obsessed, creepy, strange, harmonically fascinating last period in the 1880s. You get a little bit of everything with the Hungarian Rhapsodies. And so that's another reason. And I think for that reason, it's really one of his most successful large series of works, but also most typical. And that was really the name of the game. So my choice, thank you so much for suggesting it. I really wasn't thinking about it. I was on the side of the sonata, I was. But then I said, wait a minute, I've got to play my own game correctly. I have got to do what the great god Kankrasans commanded me to do, which is find the one most typical work by every composer worth preserving from the coming conflagration. And that work or series or album or series that fits in an album in this case, so that means it fills the bill, is the Liszt Hungarian Rhapsodies. Thank you for your suggestion. I know that Kankrasans is going to be very happy that we made that suggestion, and hopefully by doing this we can say to him, hey, he also did some incredible stuff in new and original forms like the sonata. How could you possibly eliminate the sonata? That's important too. So I think we get the best of all worlds by this selection. I really do. And I hope you agree. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.